When decorating your apartment, there's something about consciously channeling fairy energy that can really help you transform your space into a magical retreat. And the Fairycore aesthetic is perfect if you basically just want to feel like you're living in your own personal fairy tale. So in this video, I'm going to explore Fairycore as an interior style and give you a bunch of decor ideas and show you how some of it can come together in a living room design so that you can get inspired by this flight of fantasy that we're about to embark on. And if you're new here, my name is Steffi and this is Hilo, and on this channel I talk about small apartment styling, cozy things, some of the more niche alternative styles, and the joys of living alone. So if you're into that, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. So what is Fairycore and why am I talking about it? First, let me briefly get into why I'm talking about it, especially right off of the heels of my last video about hobbitcore. I know it's a lot of fantasy, a lot of magical beings, and a lot of cores. And that's because I've decided to give my channel a little theme this summer. And given how many of you seem to really like my hobbitcore video, and how many of my fellow 10th Kingdom fans came out of the woodwork in my comments, which shocked and delighted me to no end, like Huffpuff, you have no idea. Given the positive response to that video and the pure, beautiful geekery that took place in my comments, I got an idea. I've decided to dedicate this summer of Moda Misfit videos to fantasy aesthetics. It'll be a Midsummer Night's Dream theme on my channel all summer. And I'll be getting into aesthetics like elfcore, the sea witchery aesthetic, goblincore, a bunch of those fairy tale looks that are not only beautiful, but also really awaken a sense of wonder and escapism that I think we're all sorely needing these days. Sorely needing. Because Lord, what fools these mortals be. Am I right?
Lord, what fools these mortals be.
So last year we had Brat Summer. This year, let's have Fairy Summer. And join me in a Moda Misfit Summer Night's Dream of videos this summer that will be almost as enchanting as the play. Just with less fairy mischief, lovers' quarrels, and lusting over a donkey. If you know, you know. So with my Fairy Summer announcement out of the way, let's get into what Fairycore is. So Fairycore is an aesthetic that taps into the magical, ethereal spirit of course, fairies. Broadly speaking, Fairycore is all about nature, enchanted forest vibes, whimsical folklore elements, creative light play like twinkling fairy lights and an excess of candles, some visual crossover with other fantasy aesthetics, as well as with cottagecore too, and really just an overall sense of fairy tale magic. Like this bedroom from the Dryad Night is a perfect example. It looks like a wild, overgrown secret garden where pixies come out and play on a regular basis, don't you think? And this room from Kiana is another example with a similar use of faux vines, which is definitely a Fairycore decor staple, but also it's an unabashedly feminine take on the look, almost like Barbiecore Fairycore. And then Jess Lanshin did her whimsical forest bedroom makeover a couple years ago, which is very in line with this style as well. I especially love the book pages and flowers wall art display she created. That's exactly the kind of romance we're trying to tap into here. I'll link to all of these in the description, of course, if you want to dive deeper into any of these creators. But like I said, you're really free to dream up anything you want for this style. You could go full fairy or just implement elements. You could even use Fairycore to just stretch your imagination a little bit. Explore it, let its freedom and whimsy into your brain, then go on to create whatever interior style you want to create. My point is, whether you're a fantasy lover or not, the genre exists for a reason. Fairy tales tap into and exemplify something deeply human. So it's a well of creativity that you can drink from and digest as you please. That was an unattractive metaphor. Shakespeare, help me.
Lord, what fools these mortals be.
Anyway, now that we've established what Fairycore is, let me show you some decor options I've found that will give you some ideas. Starting with these. I think anything that evokes enchanted potion bottle vibes is great for this look. This option is a bit more budget friendly, while this handmade one would be more of a splurge, but either way, bottles like these look like they could have been prescribed by a swamp witch who collaborates with the forest fairies who live around her swamp apothecary to create bottled magic for us silly humans. Love potions, energy elixirs, stamina tonics, you know, all the things that we humans need like a lot of help with. At least I do. Whatever weird fantasy you attach to bottles like these, they'll definitely bring a sense of potion-fueled magic to a room that's perfect for Fairycore. And something like this terrarium cloche would also bring a ton of magic. Doesn't it look like a whole civilization of tiny fairies could be living in there? This is the kind of thing that I would have looked at as a little girl and told my mom that a fairy kingdom was definitely in there, like thriving, and she'd pretend to see them because she always humored my overactive imagination. Frankly, even as an adult, I'm still a little convinced that microscopic fairies are in there living their best lives. Why not? Whether you're borderline delusional like me or not, this would be so pretty on like a coffee table paired with old books and a candle or two, don't you think? It would add an instant Fairycore vibe to a space. And so would this hanging crystal plant. I mean, come on, it literally makes hundreds of sparkle fairies appear around it. It has the obvious disco ball effect, but in the form of imitating a plant, which harkens to the natural foresty visuals of this style without actually being a real plant. This juxtaposition of real and fake, natural and unnatural is actually pretty appropriate for this look because Fairycore celebrates the magic of nature while also being a fantasy, which is exactly what this crystal plant does. Imagine buying like 3 of these, hanging them near a window, then watching the magic happen when the sun hits them at the right time of day. It would be an explosion of sparkly enchantment. And then another beautiful example of enchanting light play would be this stained glass piece for your window corners. Don't you think it would bring such a nice subtle glow and a mix of colors to your window? Granted, I realize it's a depiction of a spider web and I am deathly afraid of bugs, which I realize that this phobia of mine doesn't exactly mix well with something as nature-driven as Fairycore, but I can't help it if I feel like bugs are the physical embodiment of evil, no matter how irrational that is. Don't even get me started on my controversial thoughts about butterflies. You can get that rant in this video I recently did. Butterflies are bugs, and their wings don't trick me. Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, this isn't a scary looking spider web at least. It's actually pretty subtle. It's not a spider web in a Halloween way. I think it would be a nice touch to a Fairycore room. And then we have something a little more simple and direct with this fairy pillow. Fairycore has plenty of room for literal depictions of fairies, whether through a pillow like this, or art, or figurines. You can really lean hard into fairy imagery here, if you want. It's also subtle enough to blend nicely into any interior style. I mean, for example, I don't have an overtly fairycore look in my apartment, although I'd like to remedy that to an extent. But this pillow would seamlessly fit with my current aesthetic. So if you're someone who doesn't want to go full fairycore, but you want to incorporate subtle elements of it, something like this would be perfect. And then also with this style, you can never have too many plants and florals, real or faux. Like this vase paired with a few willowy sprigs like these would look lovely. But something like this could just be the beginning. You could do a full-on faux flower canopy like this one I showed you earlier. Or if you're a devoted real plant mother, this style is perfect for creating your own living enchanted forest. But something simple like this would be a good start. Now moving along, there are a bunch of things you can do in terms of wall art for the fairycore look. Something cute and small like this fairy talking to her frog therapist would be perfect. I think this kind of vintage fairy tale illustration style is totally fairycore, and I like that it tells a story, you know? What are they talking about? Is she delving into past trauma? Is she learning to overcome her perfectionism and people-pleasing tendencies and learning to set healthy boundaries? Am I projecting? See, a through line with the Fairycore decor I'm featuring in this video is storytelling, which makes sense. We're talking about fantasy here. If a piece of decor strikes up a vivid story in your mind, then it would be very in line with the spirit of this style. And then this piece of wall art really channels the classic Midsummer Night's Dream vibe to me. And it just has that warm, balmy summer twilight look, along with the fairies, of course, all of which just screams a Midsummer Night's Dream to me. It's simple, it's direct in terms of its subject matter of fairies, but I really just think it's pretty. Not everything has to be a metaphor. Sometimes just a literal picture of fairies will suffice. And regardless of its simplicity, it still does the most important thing that Fairycore requires. It tells a story and transports you to someplace magical. And then a wall tapestry like this would also be a lovely storytelling piece, as well as a nice larger focal point for a room. Tapestries like this are just great in general, whatever your personal style is, because they're a relatively low effort way to achieve a statement wall without paint or wallpaper. So it's a really good option for my fellow apartment dwellers. And this one would instantly make a room feel like it has a passageway to an enchanted forest grove. Doesn't it almost look like you could walk through it and escape to a magical land? Like Alice going through the looking glass, only it'd be through woven cotton blend? Anything that gives you that sense of escapism is perfect for this look. And then if you are down for something that requires a little bit more labor, a statement wall with wallpaper like this would be so beautiful for this look. And you can order it as peel and stick if you live in an apartment and you need something renter friendly. I just love how it would bring the mushroom motif into a room, but do so in a stylish and kind of subtle way. Like at first glance from far away, this would probably look like a regular damask pattern. But when you really look, you would see that these are cute mushrooms. Any moment of surprise and delight is great for Fairycore. It's really another storytelling moment, like a little plot twist. And then on top of that, the black and white would simply complement any color palette, so that's a plus. Now moving along, I also found a couple rug options. This one is an obvious choice with its foresty looking design. It would be a nice central piece in a room for your eye to land on and establish the baseline for the enchanted grove look we're going for. And then this pink one would add a nice pop of feminine softness. And I like the natural texture of it for this look. It looks like it could have been woven by 100 little fairy hands, right? Just me? When shopping for a rug that would complement the Fairycore style, think in terms of natural textures, earthy colors and/or soft feminine colors, and patterns that evoke Mother Nature. An area rug is an opportunity to set the whole tone of a room, so make it count. Now let's get into some lighting options that would work well with Fairycore. And you can really lean into some of the more otherworldly looking lighting options. Like this lamp, for example. Doesn't it look like it was swiped from a fairy godmother's estate sale? Or like it used to be a real flower, but a spell was cast, and now it's doomed to spend eternity in a state of metal inanimation? That got pretty dark, but my point is it looks like a magical relic. And who knows, maybe it's your love that can dispel the curse and bring it back to life. And then probably the most obvious element of Fairycore is, of course, fairy lights. It's no secret that I'm a lover of fairy lights, or really anything twinkly and sparkly. But this style is your opportunity to go crazy with the fairy lights if you want to. You could make an entire room drip with fairy lights, and it would be appropriate. I'll link to these ones I found on Etsy, but really you can get them anywhere. Just go wild. And then here are a couple examples of fairy lights combined with chandeliers. Both of these would tie a Fairycore room together so beautifully. This one is a bit more cutesy and delicate, and it almost looks like a crown that a fairy princess would wear. Like Titania from Midsummer Night's Dream would totally rock this. And then this one has a little bit more of a dark magic to it, but not like evil dark magic, unless that's what you're into. I just think there's a beauty to bare branches that often gets overlooked. It's the kind of beauty that's been through some shit, you know? And the dark side of experience can still be stunning and whimsical, especially when woven with pretty little fairy lights. I guess I see myself in this chandelier. I'm tired, I've been through some things, the world is falling apart outside, but I'm still twinkling. See? Storytelling. Storytelling is the root of Fairycore. If a piece of decor summons a whimsical flight of fantasy in your brain, or even a realistic autobiographical moment, you're on the right track. And now let's see how some of these things could come together in a living room design that I created. See how enchanting this can be? Fairycore really does give you the opportunity to go full enchanted forest with a room, which is just a fun thing to do, right? And you'll see some things I haven't already talked about in this video, but I've added for the sake of creating a full living room design, like the coffee table, console table, sofa, etc. These will all be linked as well if you're interested. And I've made more than one version of this design with some small differences. This one is with a very green color palette, but I also created a version that adds some pink elements. And I think it's a color combo that needs a bit more love. Like, don't sleep on pink and green. They're kind of perfect for each other, especially for a fairy-oriented look. It's like a girly forest fairy lives here, and don't we love that? And then here's more of a maximalist take on this design, with the addition of the mushroom floral wallpaper. It's a bit more busy looking here in a very limited digital mock-up, but I don't think it would feel this chaotic in an actual room if done right. This is just a version for my fellow fairy girls who are also maximalists. This would feel foresty and magical, but also a bit decadent, which is always a good thing in my book. At the end of the day, think about your interior styling as your own Midsummer Night's Dream, your own little story that you can escape to and get swept away from the stresses of the world outside. And that's really what we'll be doing together this fairy summer on my channel. I think it'll be really fun to do a Moda Misfit Summer Night's Dream, which, by the way, was another repeating comment on my hobbitcore video. A surprising number of you requested a Midsummer Night's Dream aesthetic video from me, which, as a Shakespeare nerd who hasn't really been around fellow Shakespeare nerds since I studied him at NYU as a drama student. I really couldn't believe that even one of you requested this, let alone multiple. You seriously came to the right girl for this. I mean, I played Hermia in Midsummer at NYU, for goodness sake. You have no idea just how here for this I was.
Why so? That way goes the game. Now I perceive she has made compare between our statures. She has urged her height, and with her personage, her tall personage, her height forsooth, she hath prevailed with him. And are you grown so high in his esteem, because I'm so dwarfish and low? How low am I, thou painted maple? Think, how low am I? I am not yet so low, but that may else can reach it.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this Midsummer Night's Dream themed video, and will continue to enjoy the Moda Misfit Summer Night's Dream all summer. And to get a head start on that, I already have a few videos that are about the more fantasy-driven aesthetics, and I put them together in a playlist, which you can watch here. So to prime yourself for this fairy summer, give this a watch. And if you have any like fantasy aesthetics you want me to dive into this summer, comment below and let me know. And then give this playlist a watch.